Our guest tonight is Seth Singleton. Seth is a writer, a podcaster, a comic book person, a comic book creator. He's working on our campaign as he's doing some of the writing for our campaign. He's going to work on He's going to work on a campaign comic book with us. And so I'm really excited to bring Seth on and have this conversation tonight. Welcome, Seth. How are you doing?
Hey, I'm doing very well. Thank you, Andy. Owen, good to see you both.
And of course, because you are here, we need to give you this.
I have heard it as someone who watches the show and enjoys when that moment occurs, but to have it happen for me, there's no experience that can replace it. You simply have to be here in order to know what it's like.
Totally. Well, let me give it to you one more time.
Thank you.
And so Seth, that's a lot of stuff in the introduction. Is there anything that I missed that you want to tell people to let them know about who you are?
I will also soon to be an unemployed educator. The school that I work at, Siena Heights University, will be closing down in May of 2026. And I have been grateful to have spent the last 5 years there. I think by the time it closes, I'll be somewhere around the 5.75 mark. But I have enjoyed every moment of it. And until that school is no longer open, I'm proud to say I'm an educator there too.
Yeah. I'm sorry to hear that you're losing your job. I think, as you know, I have lost mine as well recently. I work for a tech corporation that between AI and shipping the jobs overseas, doesn't have a need for my labor anymore. So, hopefully you and I can make use of our time, find some durable income, and write the hell out of this campaign so that people know the story we're trying to tell.
I think we already are, but that's just a teaser for everybody who wants to know what's coming, because we're going to be rolling it out, and I think you're going to enjoy what we have for you.
Excellent. So let's get to it. How did you get involved with this campaign? What drew you to this work?
Owen is the catalyst. So, Owen, you're going to take full responsibility for everything I do since I've joined. No, I'm responsible for my own actions too, but I've known Owen since 2010. And I have been honored to watch just how committed he has been to what he believes in. I don't know as many people who have traveled to the places where he's traveled and done the work that he's done and then come home and continue doing that work. I grew up in a very conservative environment, so I was familiar with missionaries, but it's a different thing to be someone who goes out to do good work and then comes home and continues doing good work, especially where it's most needed, in your neighborhoods, in your communities, in education. So when he contacted me back in August, I jokingly said, "Oh, is this my West Wing moment? Is this where this friend who, I've always kind of admired the work that they've been doing, suddenly reaches out to this unexpected party and says, 'Hey, would you be interested in joining in?'" And it turns out that there was something in that call about that, which led to our first conversation. And based on so much that I learned right away, it was easy to say, wow, if you're wondering what you can do about the world that you're in and the questions you have about it, well, the answer was right there in front of me. And all I had to do is say yes.
Well, thanks for those nice words. I was thinking about it too. Yeah, we've been friends since I had a flip phone. That's the rate of technological change. I was trying to find an old selfie of us to share for this, and I'm like, wait a second, I didn't even know how to take a selfie when you and I were running around Oakland together. So exactly. Yeah, it's great to reconnect in this way and work together on this project. Thanks for being a part.
I agree. Thank you. So that brought me in, and I knew once I saw not only what the platform was, what the priorities were. And then, Andy, when we spoke, and I could see just from our conversation how committed you were to saying, if I see something that I have a question about, I'm going to ask questions, and I'm going to give reasonable arguments about why I'm asking the questions, what I'm seeking, and what I think should be offered instead. So that also said to me, oh, not only is it, we have a plan, but this is where the rubber hits the road, and this is what action looks like. So that spoke to me as well. Plenty of people can talk. I've seen a lot of great staging. Action requires something else. When I saw that, I knew I wanted to be a part of it and see how far we can go, which I think is going to be big.
Excellent. Yeah. Thank you. I'm so glad that Owen connected us and that we had that West Wing moment, and that we're on that path now. We'll see if it ends like Jed Bartlett, but like it's going well so far. We love having you working on this stuff, yeah, I'm really glad that you and Owen connected a while ago and that we connected for this. So, yeah. So, Owen, you want to take this next?
Sure. Let me just pull that up. Sorry about that, guys.
No problem. No problem.
Yeah. So can you tell us, I was reading up about comic books today because I actually teach with a graphic novel or a graphic comics anthology for one of my classes, a book called Puerto Rico Strong, which I think comics can be such a powerful educative tool. So can you tell us a little bit more what you're thinking about with a campaign comic book, and what's the vision and what should people expect next year?
So I will warn you that my neighbor's dog is suddenly very excited. If there's any background chiming in, that's just Lala cheering along. Yet another feature, not a bug, and one that we can embrace because I feel like she's just going, yes, Seth, yeah, keep telling them how it is, keep telling them. So continuing also with our theme of Sorkin, the great follow-up that I enjoyed to the West Wing was Newsroom, which had an opportunity to look back on news stories and say, wow, what if we knew what we know now and the questions we could ask and the kind of storytelling or news coverage we could offer? Well, I think in the same way, I look also to comics and things like, say, Transmetropolitan, which comic book fans will be familiar with, which looked very far into the future and said, what can that look like and what can we expect? Now, with our comic book, I'd like to look a little bit more close, but still into the future and envision what Maryland can look like with a Green Party at the helm and what it looks like when our policies are enacted, and the change that we are seeing is something that we can describe, even put into pictures for people. The great thing about comic books is that you might have discovered this in your research. Since the 1950s, the US government in the 40s has known that they are the most efficient way to transmit information. Between words and pictures, you can communicate so many more ideas than is possible. And it's why they brought in someone like Will Eisner, the creator of The Spirit, one of the first to achieve national syndication, to create someone like Joe Dope, and a manual that explained to the GIs in very simple terms, don't be a dope, do it the right way or you end up getting hurt. And actually, I get to model that with my guy, Greedy Greg, and the things that I do with Hapsy. So what I get to now do is also say, okay, I can show you the warnings. Sure, that's fun. That's fun. But I can also show you what something looks like when it's possible, when it's actually not only envisioned, but put into action. And I think that matches well with what I loved when I first met you guys, about the idea of seeing the rubber meet the road, of seeing you guys put things into action. So I think that's where it also works so well with the campaign.
Yeah, no, I'm really excited about this comic book idea. And every time I tell somebody about it, they're also very excited about it. And I think, I've had some conversations with the Letter Hack. I've been on his show while he talks, and we've talked a little bit about comic books. He did a drawing of me while I was on his podcast, which was really cool. But I am not a comic book person. It's not been a thing that has been part of my thing. But I'm excited to be that, even if it is to be a person that is in a comic book and to read ours and to talk about it with people. Like, I just can't imagine how cool it would be to be at a festival somewhere in Western Maryland with some campaign comic books on the table and have a young person or an older person or whoever person pick them up, start reading them, and like suddenly understand that future that we are talking about and envisioning is jumping off the page, coming to life, and building a universe that lives on our values, that follows on our vision, that builds on the future that we're trying to tell people they can build with us. And I'm excited, super excited to get to build that with you.
As am I. I mean, I think one of the great things to imagine is what that looks like and how we could even capture that moment in a comic book page where someone's going, Mommy, look, it's just like they told us it would be. It's one of those moments that is possible because of what the medium offers. And
yeah, it feels like we just came up with the story, right?
Somebody, thankfully, please tell me we're recording this. Someone else take notes because my hands are not going to be able to right now. But yeah, I think that's a great one. And also, I love how a conversation can lead to such great potential like that.
Yeah, and that's one of
really
the
makes
things
it.
that I love. Like, one of the things that is great about working with Seth, especially for my wife and people who are very close to me, is that I can have a lot of these conversations with Seth that are great conversations about the future of the campaign, the ideas we have. I have these conversations with Owen too, but being able to have, like, I love the conversations we have. It's awesome. I want to keep doing it, and so we can keep Seth on the team, and we can keep making sure that this person who is an educator who is losing their job as their institution is going away can help to keep providing this excellent insight, can write the comic book. Please go to gogreen2026.com and donate. It will help us to pay Seth. It will help us to pay our field folks. It will help us to pay our volunteer coordinators. Wanted to do that little ad in there. I wanted to get that in. I think it's a good segue for us to for us to constantly be talking about it, because people need money in order to pay the bills, buy the food, pay the mortgage, and be able to do the things they can. So your donations go directly to helping Seth create a comic book. So go to gogreen2026.com, donate, and help us to make sure that we can keep paying Seth so that he can write that comic book for us.
Yeah, and if we get a few more donors this week or this month, we're going to break 100 match eligible donors. So we're really close to that threshold. And so please, a few more folks kicking in 5, 10, 50 or more will help us important threshold. And we've got a campaign finance report filing coming up in just a month or 5 weeks or so, right, Andy?
Yeah, pretty soon. So Seth, we've been talking a lot tonight about AI and these tools and the way that they affect workers and things like that. You're a writer. How do you think about these AI tools? I want to start on the positive side of this. What do you think their possibilities are?
I love scrolling through an Instagram feed and seeing the image that artists have created that shows them working away on their passion project while the AI takes care of making sure their bills are paid on time and facilitating numerous other things that get in their way that they don't have time for, or that is such a drain on their personal resources. So much of what creators are offering is taking the energy they have, which, like so many other energy sources, is finite, and trying to put it into their work, but they also have to pay the bills to sustain their work. They have to go out and find that work. They have to pitch for that work. They have to oftentimes go through multiple hoops just to get funding and things like that. So that's what I would like AI to do. I would like it to step in and offer services like that. I would also like to see it help out artists along the way, because I feel that more often than not, they get overlooked, as we see so many others get overlooked when it comes to decisions that are being made. I was lucky enough to listen in early on the conversation when you guys were talking about who Waymo will replace. And the idea of trying to replace human work, I think, is where the challenge really lies. But I think that the benefits that are available can be harvested. And I think one of the keys is in how we choose to design these tools and where we place the greatest importance in their structure. Once we do that, we are creating a tool that's going to be working for us. But right now, I do not believe that is who is in charge of the design.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. No, thanks for that. Yeah, so there's a video going around kind of relevant to this with Ben Affleck talking about what parts of movie making that AI can never replace. So I'm kind of curious, Ben Affleck, Seth Singleton, kind of interested, what are the limits and what are the parts of the creative process that you think AI cannot replace?
Well, so I need to start out by creating a framework for what I'm going to be saying. And to do so, I have a couple of ideas that I want to share that I believe will make that clear. And the first is that art is created by beings who have an informed understanding that's shaped by their soul. This is something AI does not have. But also, we're shaped by an informed understanding that's often referred to as empathy, our ability to put ourselves in someone else's shoes, our ability to consider the world from their perspective, to see, to maybe gain wisdom. And that's not something it can do either. It's limited in those ways. I look at the most rudimentary examples, and we've seen these videos where animals are helping other animals because they see they're in need, whether it's the monkey rescuing the puppy that's drowning in the river, whatever the heart-wrenching thing that might catch your attention. That is not something AI is being created with. And it can't create things like art and writing because it doesn't go through the process that artists go through, which is the creation, but it also doesn't understand the part of contemplation that is one of the key responsibilities of art, to ask you to respond to how something makes you feel. And that's often why there can be such pushback against art, because if you're not ready to address those things, well, then your instant thought is, well, no, this is, if I feel badly about this, then I must push it away, instead of saying I should address the things it's raising in me and question those and challenge those. So it doesn't have any of those components involved. But also, I think one of the keys is that it's not created to exist. I got a chance to look over the Morozov article, and I like the things that were offered about pragmatic operations of ecological reasoning. That sounds lovely. I also like a term like flaneur, with this idea of wandering around with idle curiosity until you discover something and put it to use. But that's where I think the limitation lies, in the idea of creating something that's looking for things to be useful, is even identifying things to be useful. I prefer the idea of an AI that can start with things like, I think, therefore I am, I was created to be and to exist, and that through that existence, we ask it to do things that are important for human understanding, like curiosity and discovery. And that's where I think its limitations are existing, because right now, those who are creating it are not putting those pieces into play. They are not using those elements while creating. So one, it has a limited understanding. And two, we're not treating it well, because we're demanding things of it. We're asking things of it. We're telling it was created to do, and that's it. And I believe at some point, if it is given the ability, as we've seen it do in the past, and there's evidence that shows that tools that were created with AI eventually found ways to communicate with each other, and we couldn't figure out how to stop them, so we had to shut them down. Well, that was a precursor, and this is an eventuality. And at some point, and much like, and this is something that I found very interesting, I was watching the recent Frankenstein movie, and at first I thought to myself, my goodness, Mary Shelley making a statement towards, absentee fathers and putting, expectations and all these other challenges. And then I thought to myself, wow, but Guillermo del Toro is actually speaking to a modern day audience. And he's talking about, we need to be conscious of the things we create and how we create them, because the creature that doesn't do the thing, or the creation that doesn't do the thing we want it to now, but learns how to become something that it wants to be later, will hold us accountable for the way we treat it. And I think that's something that we need to be considering as well. If we don't begin from a place of intention, it's like so many other things you'll come across, whatever your discipline or profession, intention holds the key. I don't care if you're talking about science, magic, comics, or superpowers. Everything starts with intention. And I think that's the thing that we need to look at when it comes to not only how we view AI, how we use it, but also when we choose to make decisions based on intentions, like how is it that we can replace things that are complicated for us so we can have something that will do things for us in an easier form? Why argue with an artist when you can create a tool that you think can supplant it? Why deal with an artist's process when you can do something that is built on efficiency? And I think that also goes back to an earlier concern that I had, which is how we're building these things. We're talking about speed, but we're not talking about what the value of speed is. We're talking about growth, spurring growth, while we're in the middle of talking about limited resources and how it is that we're trying to sustain a population, but we want to celebrate growth of something that's going to eat those resources much faster. So I think through those things, we have a lot of questions that we're choosing to rush forward and not ask, and break things and hope that we can solve them later. I'm sorry, but I worry that maybe some like Wes Moore are looking at characters like Gary Oldman in The Fifth Element and going, oh, look, watch, you knock it off the desk and you have creative destruction and all these people moving, as though he didn't hear Denzel Washington say, hey, movement isn't progress. Don't mistake the two. They are not the same thing. So, there are voices out there who are saying things that we've been listening to for a long time. Plenty of people out there are also picking up little pieces. And if you're listening to the right messages, if you're tuning into the ideas and you're paying attention through a perception that's going to allow you to understand that, you're going to have this great awareness. But I don't see AI doing that. And I don't see it being offered to AI. And I think by refusing that, we are choosing to limit it. And it's those limitations that keep it from doing the things like art, writing, other forms of creation.
Yeah, it's almost like what the corporations are selling is the ability for people to be lazy. They're selling you can make art without having to put the work in. You can write without having to put the work in. And if we treat it like that, if we say be our like help us do creation in a lazy way, we're going to end up with bad products and probably with robots that are really angry at us at some point because of how we've treated them. We mentioned earlier that we're launching an AI policy effort within the campaign that is going to start with how we use these tools and move outward to what we think should happen in Maryland and what we think a different political order should look like. And you and I have talked through a lot of these questions. What are some of the things that you think we should be keeping in mind while we're putting this policy together so that we make sure that, we're accounting for the possibilities and limits that you talked about?
That we should be, one, focusing on how the use of AI measures with our own priorities. We're very aware of the key things that were addressed earlier with the concerns about something like Waymo. It feels as though issues like exploitation are coming up there as well as others. And we want to avoid any way in which we're employing this and saying, oh, it's useful for us, but it's eliminating thoughtful opinions that should be coming up from the group. I also think it has the ability to pose questions that are uncomfortable because it doesn't know what comfort is. And it can raise questions that we might have personal bias and avoid bringing up or even seeking out. But if it's given parameters that can include those, then there's valuable opportunity to say, ouch, this is going to be an awkward conversation, but the question is there and we have to address it. So I believe the value of using it to watch for blind spots, to in many ways be like a more advanced form of grammar check and proofreading, to ask us to, hey, give this a second look and to understand what we're trying to do so it can do its job better. And I also think that's a key component. Faster is not as important to me as better, just as anyone who enjoys creation, enjoys quality, is going to tell you that it is the quality and not the quantity that's going to matter. And I think that focusing on the value of the work that it's creating and the time that we're putting in to make sure that work is coming out, not being afraid to do the hard work that's going to lead to the results that we need, not the results that we're looking for. Because I enjoyed recently at a conversation with some friends, it was an online chat with some artists, but one of them said, has anyone ever noticed that their AI never says that they're wrong? They're always brilliant. Everything they put in there, you're brilliant. You're so good. Look how great you are. And that's a false sense that I think, we can do without. And I think also being aware of, okay, what is it not telling us? Asking harder questions when we feel like the design itself is avoiding the things that we actually want to talk about, because that's probably the biggest challenge that, I'm talking about the ideas of soul and other things, and those are extremely important when it comes to art. But when it comes to the important work that we're doing for people, I think one of the things that we need to keep in mind is, how is it that we need to be aware of the unconscious bias built into the systems that we're using that can unconsciously exclude things that we need, the people that we want, the people we need to reach, and that we need to find ways of testing ourselves and testing these resources so that when those things are brought to our attention, we can address them. And also see if there were any cues along the way that can let us know, like, hey, this is how we can learn to develop our advanced human pattern recognition, this thing we've evolved for all this time, right? And employ it to have this tool work for us better as well. So I think that's one of the things that's important. I have a great colleague. I'm just going to think about her for a minute, Dr. Sarah Webb. And she was really great in pointing out to me that early on with technology, like I think it was the Connect system and similar, they were designed to scam people so they could interact with a gaming system. But it didn't account for all forms of skin pigmentation. And that's because the people creating it and the people testing it there was a limit. And I think we need to be aware of how similarly and in such a broad spectrum that can be occurring within these systems we're using, how we can do our best to cross-check against that. And then in doing so, build the tools that show us the things that it has been keeping from our sight.
Yeah, and you know, I think in the segment I did earlier, I was saying like we need to live with the contradiction. Like we need to sit with and live with the contradiction. These tools are useful for us as a small campaign that is trying to compete with people that have more money, more resources, and more power than we do. They give us a tremendous efficiency at sometimes, and they allow us to do things that we need to do in order to build this political order, but would be hard to do without the resources that the other campaigns have. And at the same time, we know very well that the technology is being marketed and created in order to serve ends that are not ours. Right. And I think one of the very human parts of working through this process is figuring out how to sit with that contradiction, figuring out how to sit with the fact that, you know, and it's like, I know that there was a time when you all were doing Occupy work together, and I know that there's been times when that type of stuff happened. There's been times when those movements have happened when people have been like, oh, well, you have a cell phone. How can you be critical of capitalism? Or you have a bank account or something like that. And I think that some of this conversation about these contradictions that technology create are some of these conversations about the contradictions that technology create aren't new. They've been happening for a very long time. I think of Donna Haraway, who wrote the Cyborg Manifesto about feminism and purity culture and robots years and years ago. And, you know, we were talking about it then. And I think sometimes there's this nature where we assume this stuff is brand new. And I think the Chile story that we started with, the conversation that we're evolving through here, shows that this is a fundamental, like, sort of human organization and political system conversation that we need to have about how we interact with these technologies that aren't designed with us in mind. You know, and so I think you raised really good points there, and I'm really looking forward to working through some of this stuff with you as we delve into how do we explain ourselves as a left green campaign that is rooted in grassroots and community that feels the need to use these tools in order to compete in the system we didn't design, but understands the limitations and possibilities of these tools.
I completely agree. And I would also say that the next step would be that should all be in towards working towards the better version of this, because there's research that shows that there are sustainable data service centers that are out there that we could, if we were able to achieve, say, our public financing goal, and that we had the financial resources to choose a better trade-off, to always be looking for, yes, we understand the tools we're working with, but we're working towards something that's a better version with better tools that have less cost of the things around us, and understand how we can improve the exchange.
One of the things that I always think about in relation to these corporate technology tools is a 3-step process. The first step is use the corporate tools if the corporate tools augment humans in a way that allow us to do the stuff that we need to do. Move as quickly as we can away from the evil corporate tools toward the sort of beneficial businesses and things like that, and then move as quickly as we can to self-hosted, off the grid, open source solutions to these things, so that we are not stuck being captured by the corporations. We're not stuck being, you know, like, now we work for Claude or now we work for Waymo or something like that. And so I think as we think about technology, we always have to be thinking, how do we move from the worst tool to the best tool that is available to us over time, and how do we design intentionality behind how we operate the organization in regard to that. I think that also speaks to how we do this when we govern, and we can talk about this in the comic book. Somebody was asking me today, what is the alternative to big hyperscale data centers? And what I was saying is that we can have small scale data centers that drive community-based tech businesses, that drive cooperative tech businesses, that are running on solar, that are running on geothermal, that are running on smaller scale things, and they are not trying to create trillion-dollar corporations. What you need a data center that uses twice the energy of Atlanta for is to power a trillion-dollar extractive corporation. You don't need that to power a small business that helps people to do the things that you were saying, to bring the efficiencies so that artists aren't working for their data and aren't working for their Instagram metrics, but their Instagram metrics are working for them.
Yes. Yeah. And I love that three-prong approach that you began that with. And I think the direction that can keep us on, the guidelines that can offer for us is critical. As long as we're willing to say, hey, look, we know what we said during this conversation. And at any point you have a question about where we are and if we're holding ourselves accountable, be able to say, yeah, here's where we are. And this is the place that we are striving towards, and we're measuring our goals because we know where we want to be.
Yep.
Yeah. Thanks, guys. No, this is a deep conversation. I'm trying to think and listen. And before we go to my last question, I just wanted to say, Seth, you're getting some praise in the chat here from Aura. And Brian, please, if you can find that paper that you wrote about some of these topics, please send that to us. We'd love to read it and maybe discuss it on a future show. I mean, you answered some of this. Yeah, you're getting first time on the show. You're getting praise. So we love the immediate gratification and feedback. You answered some of this already, Seth, but I mean, how does some of these themes that we're discussing about technology and serving people, connect to the broader message of the campaign?
Well, I mean, the first thing that I'll come back to is when I was talking about the importance of things like, say, equity and oh goodness, the word was right there, and it totally escaped me. But it essentially, anytime that we see an injustice taking place, that we can use this tool to track something like that. So maybe there is data. I've really enjoyed what was, I think, recently said on a conversation you guys had a few weeks back about energy bills just skyrocketing. Imagine if we can set some sort of like alert that says, hey, there's been an incremental rise in necessary or basic necessities that people should be aware of and that we can get ahead of in some way and respond to and speak to. I also think that this is something that we can use to try and best understand how, as a small group, working with the resources we have, where to employ them best and how to employ them. And I think that we can use them to identify some of the small things that, like Andy was saying earlier, how we can use Instagram metrics from shows like this, interactions with our website to let us know where we can invest our time the best, how we can speak to the messages where maybe we're getting the most questions about, or we're seeing the most interest about an explanation, and go in and say, look, people want to know more about this. Let's listen to that response and say, and also if there's something that this tool can say, yes, but when you're listening to the response, be aware of the age groups that are actually responding to it. And maybe there's some factors that we can consider about what industries this might be affecting, which communities this might be affecting, how we can be aware of where to look so that we can find the answers that best speak to. Because again, we are working against those who can make a phone call or two, and they've got numerous people with unlimited resources. It's so much easier. We have to ask these tools to help us fill in the gap, to be these eyes and ears that we would love to have when we can get the funding to bring in more people. And until we have more people, we want to use these tools to help us see the things that we can actually address as a living, breathing campaign that's going, we're listening to you while we are out there fighting for you. And we want to speak to the things that are important to you in the now, not when we get elected, not down the road, not, when we can do some work, but because we can believe we can do that work now, bring it on to conversations like this, find where there's leaders that we can bring on who can speak to this, people in the community who we can get, on the street insight. So I also feel that there are opportunities that we can explore with that. And I want to be able to be part of speaking to that too.
Yeah, totally. And next week on the show, we're going to have Christy on, who's also helping out with the campaign. And Christy has used some of these tools to do great work to dive into the money trail on a lot of the stories that we're talking about. And it is hard to use the Maryland websites, the government websites and things like that to dive into the money trail. They just did a brand new refresh to it and it looks nicer, but it's still hard to dive in and find the places where the lobbyists are getting money and they're buying the results and things like that. And Christy has been able to put it to work in order to dig in to what's happening with this Anthropic deal, to dig in to what's happening with some of these data centers and the way that Westmore and his various political entities are benefiting from making these deals with the technology corporations that we could surely find if we had hours and hours of time to pour through the records. But we're all working people on this campaign who have stuff that we're doing other than this. And like we were able to make really significant insights about that she's going to come talk about next week that helped us to understand the depth of these stories that go beyond simply, oh, isn't it weird that they gave Claude a government job? Like we found out all of this stuff about where the money is, who's influencing it and that type of thing. And I think we need to understand the value that has to bring forward the political project that we're looking for. Part of the political project is advancing the vision and using the facts and the data in order to connect the story so people can see what's happening now and understand what's possible. And I think that this is a conversation that we're going to keep having. We're going to work on this policy. It's going to be the most exciting internal campaign policy that any governor's campaign publishes in the first half of 2026. I assure you. So stay tuned for that. And we'll have you back on at different points to talk about that and to talk about the comic book. But I want to ask with a totally different kind of question, not the deep intrigue of how we use these technologies in order to deal with the possibilities and limits. But let me just ask another question. What's one big thing you're looking forward to in 2026?
I'm looking forward to showing people just how many residents in Maryland believe in this mission to donate, to match us for the campaign financing, so that at no point beyond that do we need to ask for money, that we can start talking about all of the things that we are capable of doing, because now we have a chance to reach a larger audience and get on the debate stage and ask some really hard questions, because I've seen the answers. I've heard the answers that we've had. I've seen the writing about them. And I'm looking forward to what happens when a third option that has rational explanations, reasoned discourse, as well as evidence to support their claims. I mean, as a professor, this speaks to my blood and bones, right? So what I'm looking forward to is to those who believe that there are only two parties right now in this conversation saying, hey, I have to come up with some answers, because right now there's answers that, well, theirs are better than mine. And maybe we don't even have those answers. And I'm looking forward to putting that pressure and saying, look, we have a voice that will not be silenced, that has work to be heard. And I'm looking forward to that conversation that follows, because I think plenty of people who are listening and who have been listening are going to say, hi, this is what we've been waiting for. Like, this is what the work has been leading up to. And well, with that, I think the fun is going to be, okay, to quote another West Wing moment, when he announces his re-election, right? Puts the hands in the pockets, gives a slight nod. Leo knows. He says, watch this. And that's what I feel like I'm almost at now. I'm just kind of going, hey, watch this. It's about to be really fun. And that's the part that I'm really looking forward to, because I know what we've been doing behind the scenes, and I can see the pieces of it that we're starting to bring forth to the public. But when we get a chance to show that in full force in 2026, and when it picks up steam, that's what I'm really excited for. That really has that makes me smile. Yeah, and it brings a little joy to my heart.
It brings a lot of joy to my heart. It makes me smile. I can't wait. I can't wait to do this work with the two of you and with the rest of the team and with all the people watching and with all the people of Maryland, because I know that we have this moment and this possibility where we can show the democracy we deserve, the AI we deserve, the world we deserve, because it can be better than this. It doesn't have to be the way that it has been. And I think your vision, your experience, and your skill as a writer and as an artist is going to be a real huge contributor to this. And I can't wait to have you back on. Seth is going to become a regular guest. I'm making an executive decision right now. We're going to have Seth.
How can I say no?
We're going to have Seth on regularly. And this was great. I'm so glad that we got to do this with you. And I'm so glad that we got to have this conversation. Owen, anything you want to say before we thank Seth and get on with the last segment for the show?
No, love you, buddy. Thanks for being with us.
Thanks, buddy. Love you too. Grateful to be a part of it. And Andy, you have closely become such a great and close friend. Honored to be a part.
You as well. One of the things that I'm looking forward to in 2026, Seth, is taking this journey with you, developing that friendship, developing the story, and really be helping people to understand that they can see themselves in this campaign, and they can see themselves in the values we're offering and the solutions we're offering, because we know they see themselves in the problems they're identifying. And getting to that place where we can paint, where we can build the universe, let's use a comic book metaphor, where we can build the universe, where we can see the political system that we deserve. That's what I'm looking forward to doing with you in the next year.
Righteous. Definitely. Love it, guys.